It was a white house standing on high ground. There were trees near it, blue hills in the distance. I'm going to cry. I can't forget my house in Amherst and why. But its peculiar charm was independent of surroundings, for, and this was the point, the climax of the trail. It was a strangely beautiful house. His pulses quickened as he remembered anew the strange beauty of the house. The outside of it, of course, for he hadn't been inside. There had been no question of that, no question of it whatsoever. Then, as the dingy outlines of his bed sitting room began to take shape in the growing light, he experienced the disillusion of the dreamer. Perhaps, after all, his dream hadn't been so very wonderful, or had the wonderful, the explanatory part slipped past him, and laughed at his ineffectual, clutching hands, a white house standing on high ground. There wasn't much there to get excited about. I'm so sorry. It's just that I'm in the process of doing some paperwork about that lost house. And so I am very emotional, but I need the story, I need the reading, and I'm going to do it. Be with me. I have waited for how many years to get here? Since 2007. Perhaps, after all, his dream hadn't been so wonderful, or had the wonderful, the explanatory part slipped past him, and laughed at his ineffectual clutching hands. A white house standing on high ground, there wasn't much there to get excited about, surely. It was rather a big house, he remembered, with a lot of windows in it, and the blinds were all down, not because the people were away, he was sure of that, but because it was so early that no one was up yet. Then he laughed at the absurdity of his imaginings and remembered that he was to dine with Mr. Vetterman that night. Maisie Vetterman was Rudolph Vetterman's only daughter, and she had been accustomed all her life to having exactly what she wanted. Paying a visit to her father's office one day, she had noticed John Segrave. He had brought in some letters that her father had asked for. When he had departed again, she asked her father about him. Vetterman was communicative, one of Sir Edward Segrave's sons. Fine old family, but on its last legs. This boy will never set the Thames on fire. I like him all right, but there's nothing to him, no punch of any kind. Maisie was perhaps indifferent to punch. It was a quality valued more by her parents than herself. Anyway, a fortnight later, she persuaded her father to ask John Segrave to dinner. It was an intimate dinner, herself and her father, John Segrave, and a girlfriend who was staying with her. The girlfriend was moved to make a few remarks. On approval, I suppose. Maisie, later father will do it up in a nice little parcel and bring it home from the city as a present to his dear little daughter, duly bought and paid for. Allegra, you the limit, Allegra Kerr laughed. You do take fancies, Maisie, I like that. Hat, I must have it. If hats, why not? Husbands. Don't be absurd, I've hardly spoken to him yet. No, but you've made up your mind, said the other girl. What's the attraction, Maisie? I don't know, said Maisie Vetterman slowly. He's different. Different? Yes, I can't explain. He's good looking, in a queer sort of way. But it's not that. He has a way of not seeing you there. Really, I don't believe he's as much as glanced at me that day in father's office. Allegra laughed. That's an old trick. Rather an astute young man, I should say. Allegra, you're hateful. Cheer up, darling. Father will buy a woolly lamb for his little Mysikins. I don't want it to be like that. Love with a capital L, is that it? Why shouldn't he fall in love with me? No reason at all. I expect he will. Allegra smiled as she spoke and let her glance sweep over the other. Maisie Wetterman was short, inclined to be plump. She had dark hair, well shingled and artistically waved. Her naturally good complexion was enhanced by the latest colors in powder and lipstick. She had a good mouth and teeth, dark eyes rather small and twinky, and a jaw and chin slightly on the heavy side. She was beautifully dressed. Yes, said Allegra, finishing her scrutiny. I've no doubt he will. The whole effect is really very good, Maisie. Her friend looked at her doubtfully. I mean it, said Allegra. I mean it, honor bright, but just supposing for the sake of argument that he shouldn't fall in love, I mean. Suppose his affection was to become sincere but platonic, what then? Suppose his affection was to become sincere but platonic, what then? I may not like him at all when I know him better. Quite so. On the other hand, you may like him very much indeed, and in that latter case, Macy shrugged her shoulders. I should hope I've too much pride. Allegra interrupted. Pride comes in handy for masking one's feelings. It doesn't stop you from feeling them. Well, said Macy, flushed, I don't see why I shouldn't say it. I am a very good match, I mean, from his point of view, father's daughter and everything. Partnership in the offing, etc., said Allegra. Yes, Macy, your father's daughter, all right. I'm awfully pleased. I do like my friends to run true to type. The faint mockery of her tone made the other uneasy. You're hateful, Allegra, but stimulating, darling. That's why you have me here. I am a student of history, and it always intrigued me why the court jester was permitted and encouraged. Now that I'm one myself, I see the point. It's rather a good role, you see. I had to do something. There was I, proud and penniless like the heroine of a novelette, well born and badly educated. What to do, girl? God, what? Said she. The poor relation type of girl, all willingness to do without a fire in her room and content to do odd jobs and help dear cousin so and so, I observe to be at a premium. Nobody really wants her except those people who can't keep their servants and they treat her like a galley slave. So I became the court fool, insolence, plain speaking, a dash of wit now and again, not too much lest I should have to live up to it, and behind it all, a very shrewd observation of human nature. People rather like being told how horrible they really are. That's why they flock to popular preachers. It's been a great success. I'm always overwhelmed with invitations. I can live on my friends with the greatest ease, and I'm careful to make no pretense of gratitude. There's no one quite like you, Allegra. You don't mind in the least what you say. That's where you're wrong. I mind very much. I take care and thought about the matter. My seeming outspokenness is always calculated. I've got to be careful. This job has got to carry me to old age. Why not marry? I know heaps of people have asked you. A long story, wow. Allegra's face grew suddenly hard. I can never marry. Because Macy left the sentence unfinished, looking at her friend. The latter gave a short nod of assent. Footsteps were heard on the stairs. The butler threw open the door and announced Mr. Sackler. John came in without any particular enthusiasm. He couldn't imagine why the old boy had asked him. If he could have got out of it, he would have done so. The house depressed him, and its solid magnificence and the soft pile of its carpet. The girl came forward and shook hands with him. He remembered vaguely having seen her one day in her father's office. How do you do, Mr. Sackler? Mr. Sackler? Miss Kerr. Then he woke. Who was he? Where did she come from? From the flame-colored draperies that floated round her to the tiny mercury wings on her small Greek head, she was a being transitory and fugitive, standing out against a dull background with an effect of unreality. Rudolph Vetterman came in, his broad expanse of gleaming shirt front creaking as he walked. They went down informally to dinner. Allegra Kerr talked to her host. John Segrave had to devote himself to Macy, but his whole mind was on the girl on the other side of him. She was marvelously effective. His effectiveness was, he thought, more studied than natural, but behind all that there lay something else. Flickering fire, fitful, capricious, like the will-o'-wisps of old lured men into the marshes. At last he got a chance to speak to her. Macy was giving her father a message from some friend she had met that day. Now that the moment had come, he was tongue-tied. His glance pleaded with her dumbly. Dinner table topic, she said lightly. Shall we start with the theatres or with one of those innumerable opening beginning? Do you like? John laughed. And if we find both like dogs and dislike sandy cats, it will form what is called a bond between us.